Hey guys, so there might be some jingling and scratching in the background of this video just because we have to have the dogs in here, otherwise they'll be scratching the door the whole time. Anyway, so yeah, I'm gonna make the best of having both the dogs in here while we try to film this. So you guys asked us to do a budget video and talk about how we do our finances and how we got out of debt and stuff like that. So I realized that would be way too much shit in one video, to be completely honest. So the very first video I decided to do, we're going to do a series, is going to be getting out of debt. And we're going to start with how we got into debt, because I feel like this happens to a lot of people. Maybe this is some of you guys. And then Justin's going to talk about the company we used, kind of what they do, or he'll talk about that side of it. So we got married really young, 22. Were you 22? You were 21. What was the cradle wrapper? No, not really, a whole year. Anyway, so we got married really young. Nobody, like our parents, at least mine, I don't know if yours did this, just said don't get credit cards. Yeah, they didn't tell us why. They didn't explain interest. Not throwing shade at our parents, because I think they just didn't, like, I don't know. I think you just tell your kids credit cards are bad, and that's where we learned that we'll be telling our kids why they're bad. Maybe some of your parents told you, but our parents just said stay away from them, basically. So they did give us a warning to stay away from them.
And
but
it's not necessarily that they're bad, it's just you have to be careful.
Yeah, you have to be very careful, and I just think if you're young, you need to stay away from them. Unless you have a reason you have to be building credit. So yeah, maybe, I don't know, I think when we have teenagers, we might open credit cards in their names but control it, just so they start having credit. Don't you think that's a good way?
Yeah, I mean,
like with a $500 limit.
The generally accepted knowledge is you open up one, if you want to build credit, you open up one card and you make purchases on it and then pay those purchases off.
Which is what we...
One of the myths is you don't have to actually carry a balance in order to build credit, you just have to have activity on a card to show that you're responsible with it. That's what builds your credit. So
yeah, but we'll get into that later.
Yeah,
but I don't know, I'm just saying, I think that that's a good idea. If you're a parent with a teenager and you're concerned about them not being able to like get into their first apartment and stuff because they don't have credit, then maybe you want to consider getting them a very low balance credit card, then putting some stuff in their name and maybe not even giving it to them, just putting your, like, put something on it and then pay it off, just so you're building some kind of credit for them so that they have good credit.
And of course this goes without saying, but they have to be at least 18 years old.
Well, yeah, that's why they're still a teenager at 18. Anyway, so we're not getting into the story. I'm avoiding what happened to us because it's kind of embarrassing. But I mean, it is what it is. I feel like tons of people go through this. So we were really young. We had just we were about to get married when we got our first credit card. It was this feeling that my parents were spending so much money on the wedding, for me at least, to open my first one. My parents were spending so much money on the wedding. I got a David's bridal card because, you know, when I was there getting, I didn't get my dress there, but I got a bunch of other stuff there, and they're like, oh, here's a credit card. I'm like, whoa, a credit card. So I just started charging that up. Okay, then our first credit card together after we got married, our first Christmas, we were like, we just got our first townhouse. We don't have a lot of money. And then Walmart, what did we go into Walmart to buy Christmas gifts? And they're like, had a table and they're like, here's a credit card. So we're like, oh, okay. And so we get a credit card, and he had a few of his own credit cards. And what ended up happening was we didn't understand interest. We were just making the lowest payments and getting more and more credit card. And about 12 to 14 grand later, we were in deep shit. And we basically couldn't pay any of the bills. It actually could have probably ruined our marriage because at the time he kind of did the billing half, because he worked nights, but you worked like, what, 8 hours? And I was working 12 hours and going to school, so he kind of took care of that. I think we both got ourselves in such a bad situation, and he was so stressed out about it, he didn't want me to be stressed about it, and the next thing you know, we weren't paying any of our credit cards, which was... He told me, but then we got freaked out and we had to pay our rent, and then we stopped paying our cards. Pretty much what it was.
Yeah, I was trying to juggle for a while with the payments and
then you finally told me.
Yeah, trying to mess around with stuff, and that's one of the big things that I think a lot of people don't realize is whenever if you're trying to, you know, juggle your payments or whatever, You might have a card with a 5 or 10% interest rate, and then you miss one payment and it shoots up to almost 30%.
Yeah.
So you got to be careful with that, and we absolutely did it the wrong way. I made huge mistakes trying to.
We both did.
Well, yeah, but I was handling the payments, and I was trying to juggle them around, paying certain things just before it would, charge us extra and, late fees and all that, and it just didn't work.
It got out of hand really fast.
Really out of
we felt like we were drowning. It could have easily ruined our marriage. We lost pretty much the only thing we didn't lose was the car, because that was the only thing. And my car was already paid off. It was my car from high school. And when it finally died eventually, and we had to get a new car. And what did you have? You had a manual, and I was a nanny, and it was like a 2-door. So we had to trade his new car in for a really, what did we get, an XB, like the very cheap car. And then we shared it until we had like $500 to buy my brother's old Jeep. But anyway, so. I mean, in a way, we lost one car, but not because of the debt.
Yeah, I mean, and I made it a point to always pay the car note, because that was one thing that I didn't want to.
That's one thing we needed to get to work, to pay the bills that we did.
Until your car died, I mean, you had your car, and then I needed my car to get to work, so there's no way that we were going to miss a payment on that car.
That was pretty. We got to the point where we couldn't pay our townhome anymore. Like, we couldn't make payments, and we knew we were scraping by, and we were making our car payment and our townhouse payment, and then we were using what credit we had left to buy food and stuff. It got really crazy. And we ended up going to therapy, and the dog's shaking the camera right now, so I'm sorry about that. We basically lost it all. It was bad. And we realized that probably within a month or two, we weren't going to be able to pay for our townhouse anymore. And we didn't really know what we were going to do. We had made our credit so bad that we didn't, we didn't know what to do. We went to therapy because we were fighting all the time, and some of that had to do with issues of my mom had died, and we didn't know how to communicate, but a lot of it had to do with finances. And my therapist actually suggested that we see, what was it? Consumer Care Counseling?
Consumer Credit Counseling Services was the company that we used. Yeah,
we used a company, and I'll get into that in a second. But we ended up telling, did we tell your parents? Or just my... I don't remember who we told. I don't remember. I told my sister what was going on, and I told her... well, first I talked to my dad. I told him what we had done and what was going on, and was there anyway. At the time, his guest house was, it was a mess, but we were about to be homeless, and we didn't care. And I said, we'll pay you rent, because we could pay some rent. We just couldn't pay our townhouse. I said, can we move in and pay you rent till we pay some of these credit cards down? And he's like, yes, of course, absolutely. He wanted to refinish the guest house though. So we had to live at my sister's for about 2 months, and she let us live there, and we helped where we could with bills with her, and we watched my niece too, to make up for the fact that we were living in one of her rooms for a couple of months. So our plan, had we not had that, because not everyone has that, would have been to move to a studio apartment where basically it's one room.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we were going to have to do.
The cheapest rent possible.
Yeah, and it would have worked. It would have been fine, and we probably could have done the same thing, because we were paying my dad rent. But the best thing we did for ourselves, that's kind of how we got into debt in this situation. We were literally drowning. We were literally drowning and didn't know what to do. So we listened to what my therapist said, and we went and talked to this company. Basically, what the company does is they take all your debt collectively, and you give it to them. You give them permission to talk to the creditors. They negotiate your interest rates back down, because the credit card companies know that company is going to get their payments. They're going to get them their money. So that company was able to get all our interest rates back down as much as they could, and then I guess whoever it is at the company figured out a monthly payment that, well, I'm going to let Justin explain this, but basically the company, we needed that company to negotiate the lower interest rates, because credit cards company trust those kind of companies that they're going to get their money back. We were too young to apply Dave Ramsey's techniques, I think. We just weren't responsible enough because we gotten ourselves in this far. I think we were really immature, and if we had paid off one card, I think we'd be like, oh, it's paid off, let's throw the money at a new sofa or something. So anyways, I'm gonna let Justin explain what the company did and the Dave Ramsey stuff, because he's better with that stuff explaining it than me. So you want to tell him about the company, what they do?
Right, so debt cancellation companies are kind of I feel like they're not another one of those things that isn't really very well understood. Some people hear horror stories about them, and it really depends. I mean, there's some companies that are out there to take advantage of people that are in trouble, and there are some companies that are out there that are genuinely trying to help. So you have to be a little bit careful. The company that we went with was called CCCS, or Consumer Credit Counseling Services, and I think they're owned by a company called MMI, which is like, it's Money Management International or whatever. Mm-hmm. Anyway, they're one of the ones that's actually really trying to help. So the way that works is they take all of your unsecured debt. So in our case, we had all of our credit cards. They don't do anything.
Student loans.
They don't do student loans, and they don't do secured debt like a car or a house or things like that. It's usually only revolving debt. So you take in all of your statements to the company, and you sit down with an advisor, and they go over everything, and they come up with a plan to get all of your cards paid off within a certain amount of time. And the way that they do that is that they take all of your balances. They will contact credit card companies, and in most cases what they do is they take your account and make it a what do they call it? You go on a debt cancellation plan with a credit card company. And so what that means is you can't charge any more on that card. It's effectively closed. You can't use the card anymore. And in return for that and the promise that you're going to, you're working with this company and you're going to pay off the balance, then they'll either lower the interest rate or they'll give you a reduced payoff amount or something like that. It varies depending on the credit card company. So once you have that plan in place, then like CCCS takes over the dispersal of all of your payments. So you write one check or you make one electronic payment to CCCS, and then they in turn turn around and they send out money to all of the credit card companies depending on how much your minimums are and all of your new negotiated terms with those credit card companies. That amount that you pay them, it's all of your balances plus a fee. Your payment to CCCS includes, they charge a fee for their services, and I think ours was like around $30 for our situation. And that's the amount that you pay for the entirety of your plan. It doesn't go down, it doesn't change, it doesn't go up. And the way that it works is they do, it's kind of similar to Dave Ramsey's debt snowball, where you're making this payment to them, and then once a card gets paid off, then they take the amount that you were paying to that card and they put it into others. So your payment stays the same. As cards get paid off, you're paying more and more towards the other ones that you still have balances on. And the idea is that when you're doing that, you're making well more than the minimum payment most of the time on all those cards, and it snowballs to the point where you can pay them all off relatively quickly. I think, what did it take us?
4 years.
4 years to do.
It sounds like a really long time, but...
Right, but if we had been making minimum payments, we would still be paying on it.
Yeah, an important thing to remember too is it sounds a little, because for me personally, it sounded really overwhelming when they said 4 years. Because, the payments were doable. It was just so overwhelming that, 4 years? We're going to be like... But the thing is, I think after the first 6 months, we were finally like, oh, okay. And I think after 8 months, we decided we're actually going to buy a house. And we found a bank that worked with people with credit like us to give us a home loan. like we had to find a bank that would take us with like our, you know, debt issues, our bad credit. But it's not, I just don't want to feel like if they do that, that you feel overwhelmed. It's going to be 4 years, because we're living in this house. We were able to buy cars during that time. Like, we paid and still paid it. And
yeah, that's one of the important things about this kind of thing.
Your life gets to go on.
It's not like a bankruptcy. It doesn't really ruin your credit any more than your credit would already be ruined with missing payments with a credit card.
Yeah.
Our credit scores didn't really change that much until we started getting stuff paid off. And as the you know, on-time payments kept building up on all those credit cards, and you know, we were still making payments on the car. We were still, you know,
It got better.
It just slowly improved. But it's not like going through a bankruptcy where you're going to immediately, you know, trash your credit for 7 years.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, that was in 2000. Oof. It's probably 2007.
Sounds about right.
2007, and it is 2014, so about 7 years later, and we finally have above average credit. And we'll talk more about this in our budget video. Well, I guess I can talk about it now. Our next video is going to be like how we budgeted once we got out of debt, so that it never happened again, and how we live a few paychecks ahead, which will be more about Dave Ramsey. But basically, if you're in debt and you don't want to get into the business of, I don't know, paying a company to do the snowball thing, then what you need to do is probably call your creditors and see for yourself if you can do a, what's it called? That cancel.
You can negotiate some of these things yourself.
Yeah. You don't have to have that. We just needed the accountability.
You don't have to go. Yeah. The main reason that we went with the CCCS plan was because we knew that if we didn't, then there would be too much of a temptation to go and, you know, get one paid off and yay, go us, and then, you know, get right back into the problem. So
we had an IKEA card too, remember?
Yeah.
IKEA card. We got all our first furniture for our townhouse was all IKEA. So yeah, we just had a bunch of credit cards. We were not smart about it, but just know that like it's not the end of the world. We thought at that point in our lives that we were never going to be able to own a house. We were never going to be able to get a new car again. That we were just always going to be poor. Like, not that we're rich by any means, but you know what I mean? Like, I think we just always thought like life would always just be this stressful financial burden.
Paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah, pretty much. And we'll get into like, you really need to get out of debt before you move on to the next step. I mean, I guess you could apply some of it.
Well, I mean, the budgeting aspect of it, everyone needs to be on a budget.
Yeah.
And a lot of people get freaked out about the word budget, but it's really just coming up.
Or they don't know what budget means.
And it really what it boils down to is just coming up with a plan for the money that you have.
Yeah.
And the money that you make. So there's nothing scary about it.
Well, yeah, not really. And we'll talk about how we budgeted. Really, though, we did not. You could start a budget now as you're getting out of this, and we'll talk about it in the second video. But really, we didn't until we got out of that debt.
Yeah.
I don't really know why. I guess because it was a little overwhelming. To be honest, I think it was a little overwhelming. So we waited till we got out of debt. But you can start that now.
We were focusing on getting through the credit card problem.
And that's why I think it's okay if people wait.
If we were sticking to a budget while we were paying off, because then we probably could have put even more money towards it and gotten out quicker. But
I think if you're focusing on doing this yourself, like the snowball, and you guys can look up Dave Ramsey and like his plans and stuff. It's all over the internet. There's YouTube videos on it. But I think that for us personally, if we had tried to budget while we're doing the snowball, that it all would have become too much. So I really think that if you are super overwhelmed right now, the first thing you need to focus on is snowballing your debt and getting out of it. So y'all know our uh-oh in life, and y'all don't. I think in general in life, it overwhelmed even people in our life, like some friends and family that had some really shitty remarks when we picked out our next house. It's a $400,000 home, and yeah, it's big and it's nice, but and I think what got people was the fact that they're like, but y'all are always like, I can't do this because of my budget. Because I'll do that. My friends will be like, hey, let's go down to Louisiana for the weekend. And I'm like, it's not in our budget. And it's not that people don't understand that it's not in my budget doesn't mean I can't afford it. It means I don't.
My budget, you know.
Yeah, I don't want to disturb my budget for it.
Yeah.
Like, and part of your budget isn't just I'm paying this, this, and this. Your budget is I'm saving, and we'll talk about that later. I'm getting into the next video. I need to stop. But basically, if you do these things, it can get better. It's not going to be that bad. So I think the number one thing is if you have problems and you know that you're not going to be able to snowball your bills yourself, and you know you'll probably pay one off and then start using the money elsewhere, then you really need to get with one of those companies.
Yeah, but again, you have to be careful. Do your research.
Mm-hmm.
We found out about CCCS with a recommendation. If you live in an area, I mean, it's a nationwide company. They have offices all over. So
I'll find out the parent company and leave the link or leave their website link below, so you guys can find maybe, I don't know, if they have a company where you live.
yeah, they have branches everywhere. I just don't know if it's available to everyone or all of the details. It was available in Houston, and that's what we used, and they were reputable and recommended by someone that we trusted, so that's who we went with.
Yeah, just do your research. You know, if you find a company you think's reputable, like I always, when I'm worried about something, I put like a company name and scam into Google and I see what comes up, or company name and rip off, or just do your research. That's what we did. That's our little video on how we got out of debt, and we will talk about how we started a budget and what we do to budget in the next video, which will probably be a week or two. I'm not going to make any promises on these series just because life's kind of kooky right now. Like, we think we don't have anything on weekend, then we won't be home. Like, it's just, I'll try to get it out and film it next weekend and get it out the following week, but no promises. Anyways, we'll see you guys next time. Bye.